we talk about all things Pianocraft. I am going to try not to drop my camera because we are talking about voicing. Specifically, we're going to do some before and after upright voicing. And so when you're going out into the service call, when you're going to your customers' houses, this is kind of a real case scenario where you'll get to a piano like this, and it is pretty edgy, bright. So that kind of nasally, almost a metallic-y sound. It's almost sounds like there's a crustiness to it. And that's pretty typical out in the field. You're going to see a lot of that. So to give you a little bit of perspective, this is like E5. And here's that's E4. And here's E5, which I did a little bit of work too. Before. You hear the difference there? That zingy sound, that's what we're going to be striving to get rid of, because that is something that you will get called back to your customer's house for. They will. It's funny because you'll have customers that have gone years without getting a tuning, right? It'll be a decade sometimes. And the unisons will be crazy. It'll sound really far out of tune. And you'll tune it and you'll be amazed at what you've done. However, your customer may call you back and say, like, it's too intense now all of a sudden. Because what you've done is you've honed in those unisons to be pure. And in some cases, that pure unison now is just too much. And so what I recommend, if you get to pianos that have this edgy brightness, approach your customer and say, hey, I'm going to do the tuning for you. No problem. We can get that taken care of. But what I want to suggest, or what I want to offer you, is to soften the sound of the piano. It's got a little bit of a brighter tone. Do you like that? And that might be a better question to start, is do you like the tone of your piano? Usually the answer is, well, I don't know. Can I do anything about it? And usually it's, yeah, if it's pretty bright sounding. And what that is from those hammers constantly hitting the strings, that felt packs in deep more and more, and it compresses. And what we have is special needling tools that we puncture that felt to release that pressure and soften the hammer, therefore softening the sound. When they hear that, they're usually like, whoa, nobody's ever told me that. I would absolutely love to do that. Can you soften the sound? Before you do it, though, just make extra sure. Maybe do a test note, just like I did right here. So here's before. Here's it after. So I did my E. It's got that rounded tone. Do you hear that, Mrs. Smith? Yes, I actually really like that. Good, because that's probably closer to what these hammers used to sound like. Questions about that and how to kind of present this to the customer?
Before you tune, would you just like bring a unison together to make it sound better? For your
that's a good question. You're saying that like at the very beginning?
Yeah, just like bring the E5 and the E4 unisons like together so you can tell, so they can see the difference.
That's a good point. To be honest with you, I don't talk about voicing until I'm done with the tuning, because I don't know what I'm listening to quite yet. For instance, this piano actually hasn't been tuned yet. So some of the stuff that I'm actually hearing, I think, are actually the unisons being out and not necessarily the harshness of the hammers. So I would recommend, after you're done tuning it, hey, I tuned the piano. You know, you can really hear how bright and how intense everything is at that point. And then it's just, do you want me to voice and soften the hammers? It's a good question, Justin. I would definitely do what you're talking about, but basically tune the piano first and then recommend what we're talking about doing. Good point. Be sure that your customer, and this is a way that I've done it, and it seems to work pretty well, and I think we talked about it in one of the other sessions with Jacob, is, hey, if the brightness right now, you don't like the way it sounds, if the brightness is at a level 10, what would you like it brought down to? If they say 6, 5, 4, 7, that's pretty great. You know, you can definitely take it down. But if they're like, I'd like it brought down from a 10 to a 9.7, and we'd be like, okay, no, we're going to leave it the way it is. Once you're really at a point to where you're like, I want it really brought down, we can kind of work with that. I would just hate to kill a sound that you already kind of like. So usually if they say 9 or even 8, I'm kind of not messing with it. I'm gonna like, oh, I'll do a little bit, but for the most part, I'm not gonna do anything until I can see it in their eyes. This is too bright. I would love to soften that sound. I love a warmer sounding piano. So just kind of food for thought.
Is bright the technical term for that?
It actually is. That's the term that the industry has chosen to use. I don't know if Stacy, maybe that's just here, but Stacy, is that where you're from? Is that kind of the term as well?
They'll say bright. They'll say bright. Customers don't use bright though all the time. They'll say, this sounds harsh, or they'll say harsh a lot, and sometimes they'll use bright.
They'll say metallic-y.
Yeah, they'll say metallic-y. They'll say that. Tingy, metallic-y, harsh. What else have you guys heard term-wise? Those are good ones. That's what they're saying when they say that. It's hard. It's like you're translating a language, right? Yeah. So
yeah, they'll say pointed sometimes. It has kind of a pointiness to it instead of a soft roundedness to it.
I've heard people say buzz.
Yeah.
It's like the zing kind of. It's like a buzz.
Zingy, buzzy, harsh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good. Oof, those are good.
Yeah. So, and then usually the language that I like to use to kind of give them an impression of what I'm about to do is I want to soften, round the sound. Right now the sound is coming at you pretty intensely, and we want to soften it and round it and make it a sweeter sound. So as you can hear, nasally, bright, metallic-y, intense, pointed. Now with afterwards, softer, sweeter, more melodic, rounded. But I still have the attack when I need it. So it's not totally dead. It's just rounded. It's rounded. And that's another way I usually, I'm going to sweeten the sound. Make it just have a sweeter, sweeter tone to it. I've had customers say, I really like dark velvet chocolate. Like, then I know that I can go really mellow. Like that's code. I've had for all the customers that say I like a dark, rich sound, that's mellow. That's like super ultra soft and mellow, and they love that.
I hear that too. The dark, rich, warm. No, they say dark and rich. They do.
Yeah.
Colorful.
That's the best sound.
I like that sound too, personally. So that's, some of the terminology that people will use is just kind of that dark, bright, these are, and part of your job as technicians is to learn the language, because you're a translator, you're an investigator. That's what you do. And so the more you can understand what they're meaning. The craziest one was when a customer was talking about the last technician, and she was saying that I had this souffle and it's just a beautiful souffle, and then he popped it and I don't like the way it sounds now. And I'm like, okay. So with a lot of digging, I was able to figure out that he basically just made it too soft. So we had to bring it back up. But yeah, just the words that people will use, it's kind of fun. It's really interesting. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to, are they talking about this piano being too bright or too mellow? That's really what it is. 9 times out of 10, it's too bright. In this case, too bright. Samick this is a Samick kind of console studio piano. Now Samick, the hammers, they use a lot of glue in the hammers and the fibers and everything. So usually you'll have to put more energy into really softening these hammers, and you can go a little bit more intense, is what I found with these kind of cheaper, more economical Asian-made pianos. And so again, That's not the case with all hammers, so tread lightly. But a lot of these hammers that you're going to see are ultra bright. Even the Yamahas. You can. This is a great process to go through, and it's pretty quick. And what I'm going to do is show you. Now, I know that I've said I like the single needling tool, but I'm going to kind of back up a little bit because I was looking through our tools today, and I was like, I'm going to try to pull off the old three needle, right? And the thing that I like about this is that these 3 needles, which are poking out about 1/4 inch, are spaced perfectly to the strings. So unlike when you're poking at it with a single needle, you're kind of having to make sure that each of your 3 pokes are just right where you need them to be. Whereas this takes the guessing work away, and it's like you find one of the lines of the strings, you line it up and put 1 stroke, boom, with the 3. And I like that. So I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. I might be putting this guy in my toolkit. Another thing that I found is one of these guys. And so this is that angled upright voicing tool. And so I'm going to kind of show you that. Now, I did a little bit of experimenting with the P22, the Yamaha P22 in the shop. And what I was experimenting with was where to actually do this voicing. So I've always typically done it literally from this angle, gone and go boom, like that. Now, other people have said, no, we like going like this. Does that make sense? Instead of going down, which is what I've typically always done, again, say this is right in the center is the strike point. I'm below that strike point pushing down. Or these folks above the strike point going up. To be honest, personally, I kind of like the way that I was doing it better. I like the sound. But you all can definitely experiment and play around with it. But I like, and it felt easier for me to just simply go and take this. And again, at the bottom, so pretend there's these string grooves or string indentations. I'm at the bottom of those string grooves and then just pushing straight down like this. Boom. That's it.
I found the same thing, David. It's too difficult going the other way, unless you have the tool in your hand right now. But I think I get better results going the other way. I've been experimenting a lot on uprights, and it's just you can get a faster result going the other way.
Oh, I'm so glad. Because when Jacob, he mentioned that he's had good results going upwards with it, and that's great. And it's so subjective too, right? But I just like the way it sounds, and it's very easy to do it this way. And so let's go ahead and just kind of listen to this really quick. So we haven't tuned this piano, but pretend we just tuned this piano, and it's a gorgeously tuned piano. Hey, Mrs. Smith, can you come here and take a look at your piano? Yeah, okay, you're done already? Well, I finished the tuning, and the piano has a bit of a brighter, kind of more percussive-y, more of an edgier, pointed sound to it. Do you like that? Yeah, not really. My kid's playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, and it's like glass. Totally understand. What I would recommend we do is actually soften the hammers, therefore softening and rounding out the sound to make it more pleasant and just sweeter. Do you want me to do that? I don't know. How much does it cost? Well, actually, we don't charge for it. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes, and I can just quickly do that. Well, can you do a sample? Can you show me? Sure. So at this point, I would go through and just say, we're going to just try one of them right here. So here's the before. Now here's the after. Oh, I like that. I love that. Yes. Can you do that to everything? Totally. That's literally how it goes with our customers. That's pretty much almost verbatim.
That's really good because you asked them how they liked it first. Because some, like Ellen today, had a Sherman Clay he was tuning he said it was so bright it could shatter glass. That's a pretty intense way to describe it, right? But he said the customer loved how bright it was. So you have to talk to the customer. Your preference isn't going to be theirs. So yeah, so smart.
Now, David, if it's like too bright and you're going to have to do multiple passes, are you charging for that or no?
Depending on what service they've purchased, you know, if it's a signature service where we're doing extra stuff, no, I won't. If it's one of those things that I'm like, man, I need to regulate these pedals. They are only doing kind of an express 1 hour tuning. I need to lubricate the pedal rods. There's a little bit of a squeak. I'm going to recommend a whole bunch of these things, including the voicing, and just kind of say, you know, it'd be a small fee and a small charge. It's usually something that I'll throw in though. It's because it's one of those wow factors that takes minutes. And none of your competitors will have done this to their piano. I can almost guarantee you that. And so it's a easy way to make a big difference that keeps you in their mind forever. You're the one technician that knew how to do this. And usually they'll say, well, why didn't the other guys do that? Or why, you know, I used to have, most people don't know how to do this, Mrs. Smith. Luckily, I've had training. I know how to do this. And it's a service that we like to offer because it makes the piano sound so much better. Wow. Yes. That's it. So now that I've gotten the approval for this, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, either using this guy right here. Again, I'm going to go right here so you can kind of see it. I pull back the hammer, as you can see. That way I'm also pushing pressure on the molding just to kind of hold it still, and I just go straight down like that. So you can see. And I'm going into the string grooves indentation at the very bottom end at that angle. You can also use this guy. You won't get as much of that angle, but this works as well. You see that? And this is typically what I actually do use. So that's a good before right here. Nice and glassy, nice and edgy. I'm going to use this tool and just go kind of straight down with it. And I can barely get this tool in there. They're that hard. So I'm thinking that at some point somebody lacquered these. So I'm just going to put it in there. So just this is a nice rounded tone to it now. I'm kind of liking this tool a little bit for that. And if you notice, I have these like sticking out like a ½ an inch, these needles, because it just allows me to kind of really get where I want to go and just go straight down. Still a little bit bright, so I'm just going to go a little bit higher on towards the actual strike point, and that made it better. Another thing you can do, when it is more of a temporary solution, is kind of scraping up those grooves to kind of break up that density, and that does make a difference. But I would say that that's not as long term as some of the other stuff we're doing. Now, another thing that I do tell customers is what I'm doing, just so you know, is going to come back. So all I'm doing is breaking up that density, that compactness in the hammer, and as you play it, it's going to compact again. So even if we go a little bit overkill, you're going to play it in and it will get, you know, packed in again. So, you know, maybe next year you're like, you know what, you did it, and I don't like the way it's, you know, it sounded for a little bit, but now I like it the way it is now, so let's just not do it this time. I've had that. I've had other people say, you did it and it was great, but now it's bright again, do it even more. So you'll kind of have all of that, which is another reason I don't like to charge for it, because I don't want to get kind of strapped in with like, hey, you charged for this voicing thing, and now it's, you know, as a free edition, you kind of get to stay in the clear. Well, I can't be too mad that it's a little softer than what I wanted because he just did it for free. Does that make sense? typically what I'll do is I'll start in the bass. So I will go ahead, buckle up everybody, hope your seatbelts on. Whoa! So again, right here, going through. I'm just gonna kind of push this backwards because I only have use of one of my hands. But let's just, it's nice and tubby. Typically, I'll try to go as low on the hammer in the bass as I can towards this bottom side, low on the bottom side, because I don't want to do too much to the bass. So the closer I get to the strike point, the more effect it's going to have. So the further down I am, the less effect it's going to have. So in this bass, because I want my bass to be thunderous to a point, I want it to breathe and ring out. I'll try to do minimal bass work in the beginning. Questions about that?
So you're doing it farther away from the strike point, more into the shoulder.
Correct. And I'm not super familiar with using this 3-needle tool for this, but the thing that I am liking is, you know, I am voicing kind of all the way around that hammer, including that. So in my bichords, one, you know, the middle, the edge needles are puncturing where the strings are touching, and the center needle is touching kind of just in between those strings, and that's fine. Just kind of breaking up that density. But as you can see, this doesn't take long. As a free offering, it's a huge benefit. So typically, I will get through the bass and going and do this middle section of the treble before I really test it out again. I'm actually going to go through all of these things before I really play it in, because I know what this is going to do to the sound. My big question is, did it do enough? Very rarely am I ever like, oh my gosh, that was a lot. It's usually like, okay, I need to do a little bit more closer to the strike point as opposed to the shoulder, or I need to just go deeper with it. That's typically what happens. But you could see how quickly you can do this. And I think that's one of the most amazing, that's one of the things that the customer finds amazing is like, wait, you're done already? That's all it was? I've waited all these years and had this sound, and you did it in like a couple minutes? And then they kind of get mad at their other tech. We just stay out of that. So. Usually by that time when you play that, they're like, what did you do? That sounds so much better. Because we have. That wasn't a lot of work, and that made a huge difference. And now it makes this piano sound so much sweeter. And guess what? Your tunings just became that much better. Because when you have a brighter piano, it accentuates any imperfections in false beats, in just the strings themselves. And so not only does it make the tuning sound that much better, it helps the tuning last longer, because now you have a softer hammer hitting those strings, so it lasts longer. So there's a lot of benefits to softening the. But if you notice, that bass that I didn't touch that much still rings out. What do you think? Can you hear it on your end?
I
That
can.
sounds way different.
Yeah.
No.
It's crazy that even through the microphone, you can still tell the difference.
Yeah. You know, when I was first shown these techniques, it was just like, I wasn't sure if I was going to notice it, because they're like, hey, watch this. And then showed it to them, I'm like, whoa, I love the sound. It's dreamlike. It's melodic. It's beautiful. So certain things that I would be careful of is if you have jazz pianists, don't do this. I'm talking from experience where I had a jazz pianist and I told him, hey, I can voice it down and do this. And like, yeah, that sounds cool, man. And then like he played it and he's like, where's my piano? Because he just wanted to have it punch and go through. And so then I had to like re-lacquer the hammers. So yeah, be extra sure.
That's a whole other discussion. If you can, oh yeah, if you have a player, know what kind of music they play, because it does.
It does.
There are kind of categories, and that is definitely one. Those jazz, they like it clear and crisp and like punchy. Yeah.
Yep. And just so you know, another thing to keep in mind is the fact that you may have your customer, after you're done doing this, say, hey, and this is why I would head it off at the pass. Just so you know, because we've made it softer, you may think that the piano is playing a little heavier, but we haven't changed the weight at all. What it is because we've softened the hammers, it's taking more pressure, more force for you to get that sound that you're used to, that intense brightness. Because before, you barely touched it and it would be edgy and bright. Now you have to work a little harder for it. Are you okay with that? Yeah, that's fine. So just keep that in mind.
Right, because you've changed the pressure of pressing the key to get mezzo forte versus when you're playing that same weight, you're getting more forte type of thing, right?
Exactly, 100%.
How much can you, like, how many times can you do this before you risk, like damaging, or they need like the felt needs to be replaced?
That's a great question. With something like what we're doing here, it is so, how should I answer that? I would say even in the times that I've over voiced and like, whoa, I ruined that sound, I've always been able to bring it back by lacquering up the hammers. I've even pounded the hammers back in. Does that make sense?
You take like a voicing block, just put it behind it and hammer it into the voicing block.
Back into place. I've done that. So honestly, I've never run across a hammer that I have completely ruined. So that being said, the techniques that we're showing you are less invasive than other things, because we're not saying, hey, just go to town on it. This is kind of like tread lightly and go from one end. That one's still bright. So I would say, and this is something that I literally just talked to Sean, our newest tech, about today, because he's doing a lot of school tuning. That's better. He's doing a lot of school tunings. And school pianos are crazy bright. And I just said, hey, don't charge them. Just go ahead and practice some of your voicing. Church pianos that are in those auxiliary rooms. Go and see what moving these angles at this during this process, what it does. And you'll get so used to it and be like, okay, I know when I go at this angle, it does it that much, versus the other angle, it does it only this amount. And now this is the time where I can go. So I'm just gonna go through and attack that one a little bit more. Kind of tubby right here. But this is kind of where the artistry, and you get to have fun with it. But getting used to your trills, hitting the same pressure every time. That took me forever because I'm not, first and foremost, a piano player. So I was like, so that if you're a piano player, you got to hit leg up on us.
where I'm glad I'm learning chromatic practice
Yes.
with my chromatic fingerings.
So with the ones that I'm playing and that are sounding still bright, I'll go a little bit more towards that core, that strike point core, just moving it up a little bit. Another thing is I'm probably going to do a little bit of scraping of those. I'll try to get this angle. Sorry, y'all. We're getting it. Yeah, Classic was just like, hey, whatever you do to this, we're fine.
So, David, if it's in a high-use type of piano, would you expect, the voicing to harden back up after how long, do you think?
Oh, say that one more time. You cut out.
So if the piano is a more active played piano, how long do you think, this voicing would hold, for a more active piano?
So the funny thing is, when I go back to customers that I do the same process over and over, like year after year, they've gotten to the point, despite them being played just as much, I've gotten it to the point where they've softened it in just a certain way that it just holds for longer. So I find that the initial ones don't last that long. I would guess 3 to 6 months, max. Now, that being said, like with concert instruments where we're tuning, like Willamette University, I feel like I'll voice it down for like an event or something, and it feels like a couple weeks later we're tuning it again, and it's just so bright. Because there's a difference between a lot of high traffic piano and performance intense piano. So like we have a lot of teachers, this will be good for them for a long time, because even though they have players on it all day long, they're not doing what performers do, which is literally like smacking the piano, going crazy, which is another reason.
So there's a difference between just activity on the piano versus, like you said, performance, or students who are high level students that are going to be very active on the keys as opposed to just playing the keys.
Yes, and to that point, I have found that a lot of the concert pianists that I work with, they're not even listening to the tuning that much. And I don't know if it's because they're like, yeah, the tunings are so subjective, it's not going to last that long. They're so intent on the mechanics of it. It always surprises me how badly out of tune the high level players, their pianos are at the time I'm working on them. They're like outrageously out of tune, and it doesn't seem to affect the player.
That's so funny, David, because that's so true. Like at the university, they're not tuned as much as they should be, and all the artists are like fine with it. But if like if a note is sticking out, like voicing, they've called like panicking, like, can you drive over here right now before this concert?
Or if there's something that's not quite repeating like what they think it should. That's the big one.
Yeah, or dampers. I know they get scared with dampers.
Yeah. Squeaky pedal. Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. It's always, I just realized that. I didn't even think of that before. That's so true.
Now, David, when are you bringing up, I know a lot of technicians are against voicing when the grooves are too deep and, like hammers are kind of flat. What's your stance on that? And when do you bring up in a conversation, like, let's maybe file these hammers, let's reshape them with the customer?
I'll always do this. Yeah, we can shape them, but like, this brings people so much joy just doing this, and I would say that 9 out of the 10, no. Yeah, I would say that probably 7 to 8 out of 10 people that you recommend surfacing hammers will not do it. Would you agree, Victor?
Yeah, it's definitely out there. I would say we're maybe 6 out of 7 would not take it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
20%. I'm thinking max 25% of the people will take you up on hammer surfacing. This is great because the other 75% of them get a sweeter sounding piano. You're not going to hurt the piano by, even if it has deep grooves. I haven't found doing this stuff that we just showed you. It's not going to make anything worse. It's just going to make them that much happier with the piano. So that's why I typically do it.
Yeah, the hammer shaping's more if you're doing like a package, like you're really.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is that more when you're doing the half day, full day package that you're going to then absolutely do some shaping and touch ups? Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. The only time they accept it is if I include it in a package. I mean, it's the price is in there in the package, but since we're already there, they're fine with it. Rarely do they just do it alone.
We're in the, by the way, this is the old artisan restoration department in Portland, Oregon, that is now kind of the classic pianos. They do a lot of touch-up stuff and repair work. But you can see the pin blocks from the old PTA videos. This is where PTA stuff was shot, years ago. But yeah, we have the swing in there too.
I was gonna say, I was like, it looks so familiar in there.
They made it all white, which is actually a good call for them because it's way more light and airy, but it's not as moody for me. Like, I need things to be a little bit more nightclubby, moodier. So, but this is probably better.
And so, David, will you really not shape hammers anymore? If they're that bad, will you just recommend replacing them instead of shaping?
Oh no, I'm my kind of rule of thumb for shaping is if I can get a fairly decent shape out of it and the high treble hammers have still some enough mass on there, I'll totally shape. Am I going to do it in the customer's home? No, I used to. I really don't like doing that. I get kind of sweaty and the fibers stick to me and it's gross and nobody needs that.
It can get in your eyes too, which is the worst.
It can totally get in your eyes.
Where my desk was, you guys, in the piano store, they were always refurbishing by me. It's like they would always move the piano right by me, which is great because I'm like, hey, we're working next to each other. But they like the fluff I'm just like, you guys. I would get so and it would get in my eyes, and it's just the worst. It's
like you're in the yard with dandelion fluff
all over. I'm like, guys, I would have that discussion, guys, you're making a huge mess around.
Yeah. And it's not that great to breathe in either, especially if they're older hammers.
Yeah, I recommend the respirator masks on those. It's just I'm so bad. I never used them, but I always recommend them. But I'm always like, I hate the way this thing feels, and I don't know. I don't shape them that much. I'm sure my lungs still have some of that crap in it though. But Victor, you are right. The optimal thing to do would be to surface the hammers, get them back to a nice rounded, the proper shape, get those grooves out of it, and then do what we're talking about.
I would do that over replacing them any day if you can reshape them. Yeah, that's the choice.
We do that a lot for schools. Like you were saying, schools are very bright, so we'll shape almost all those hammers and then voice them, and they stay pretty long.
Yeah,
I feel like you get a longer lasting effect if you do shape them before.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, how long does it take you to shape a set of hammers though?
It's a good while. I mean, probably 3 hours.
Yeah, I would say that's probably all right.
Yeah.
To get it because to actually restore the shape sometimes is what you have to do, because other technicians will kind of strap them, shape them in a weird way. Sometimes they'll come in and then they'll just kind of you almost have a squared off hammer that then you have to really take down the shoulders and reshape. So yeah.
Well, and like you're saying, usually the schools are the worst ones, so usually the grooves are a lot deeper, so you're going to spend a lot more time shaping. Every once in a while you'll get lucky. I can probably do it like in 2 hours, but most of the time not so lucky.
So does anybody have the Irwin hammer sander shaper? We got
no,
one.
but I saw a video of it. You're talking about the little hand sander that is basically what, an inch wide or whatever it is that they use to shape the hammers. That was wild to see that.
Is the electric one or no?
It was pneumatic, I thought, or
it is
air
electric.
pressure.
It has a foot pedal.
Yeah.
It basically is a Dremel, like, a Dremel tool with a wand, and I messed up a set of hammers, but luckily it was for like a spare action that we were just testing it out because we had just gotten this thing. They were running a special back years ago, so we tried it. I'm like, let me try it. So I slapped this, I don't know, 80 grit sandpaper to it, and I just like started going to town. I went slowly, and I started doing it, and then and I looked at it afterwards, and it was like half the size of the neighboring hammer. After I was done, I'm like, what did I do? Daisy, one of our technicians, they actually love it and they use it. So I don't know. I guess you just practice with it because I've heard good things about it. I just never, I didn't do it well. Yeah, I would love to see you all experimenting with this kind of thing because it makes a massive difference. This is the wow factor. One of the wow factors we were talking about the other day. When you can go from what it was to that, it's just a sweetness, and you won't get a customer for life because you are the only one who's ever been able to do that.
Would there ever be a situation where you would needle up and down on the hammer, like both the top and the bottom?
I tried that today. I kind of went through both on my P22. I went kind of downwards and then upwards and then experimented. I didn't find that anything made as big of a difference, as quick of a difference as just doing this.
So doing both sides isn't necessary?
No, I haven't found that to be the case. I'm speaking for me, but I found that this simply does makes people just thrilled with their piano. I will experiment because I did find this guy, and that this guy does make it easier to do that. So I may experiment a little bit with it. Like, okay, I'm going to go down and then come up with it.
Yeah, there's multiple ways. On the two different classes that I was at, they talked about a lot of different methods, and they said, your mileage will vary based on the hammers, based on your own technique, and you have the hammer, and if you're going in the low shoulder, the higher shoulder when you get close to the strike point, and also your angle of the needles going into the hammers as well. You can vary that. There's so many different variables. Yeah, so you're coming in that angle, or the way that you're doing it, going away from the strike point or going toward the core. There's lots of different ways that you can do it.
Just so people know, when we're talking about shoulder, we're talking about this. This is called the shoulders. Kind of like looking at your shoulders. This is the widest part.
Yeah, because the way that they broke it down in the class, so if you have a straight line, if you put the hammer so that it's pointing straight up, so it's, yeah, that's good. So this way you have, at the base of the hammer is, an up and down line, or across the center point of the hammer.
Yeah.
And you have they talk about having 4 quadrants across that, an upper, a mid, upper mid, a lower mid, and then a lower. And you have those 4 quadrants, and you try to stay away from the strike point unless you're doing sugar coating.
Yeah.
And then you can play around with where are you at in those different quadrants. And if you want to work it slow to more aggressive, you work the lower shoulders, the mid shoulders, and then you work at the angles that you're talking about, David, where you're going off of the string grooves.
Yeah, it's funny because when my brother Adam was working, with an artisan, it was versus what he's doing now. So Adam used to be part of artisan, and it was more field work. And now he's classic pianos kind of main Portland concert prep guy. It's a different beast. So when you're going into the field, I don't know, it's kind of like, you're kind of like Delta Force going into these war zones. It feels like you're grabbing whatever you can, you're figuring things out. You don't have, you have to figure out usually quicker techniques and processes that the customer you can either do for free, do for inexpensively. Whereas in the showroom and, you know, in this environment, you have more time, you have more things at your disposal, and the cost of everything is going to be kind of on that back end when they sell the piano. So it's a different beast. So the stuff that I would have done when I was doing more that in-store work is finessing and spending more time. So I have to clarify that everything that I'm showing you is more for like field stuff. It's that field work that really with minimal investment of time makes the most difference. And that's there different thinking, there's different thoughts on this. So I should have specified that. There's just more time when you're not in the home environment. And so yeah.
So is there like a difference in sound depending on where you're putting that needle?
Yeah. So so where I was putting it, Stephanie, right? Is that who just asked? Yeah.
Yeah.
So where I was putting it is essentially like this and then down. Let's pretend, I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm like looking at you guys while I'm trying to do this. So pretend, okay, look at the very pointed part of that molding. This is called the molding. You got the wood molding, the pointed part. Imagine this imaginary line. I'm well below it going down. The closer to that center line I get, the softer, more muted, rounded it's going to get. So I'm trying to make a bit of a difference with and stay clear of that line. And because the closer I get to it, the more quiet, the more the softer, maybe even the more muted the sound could get. So that's why I always start low on with these uprights, low on that hammer, as low as I can go. That's why I'm pulling it back. If you noticed, I'm pulling it back so that I can get this tool in there to get as low as possible at that angle. Which would be another reason to get something that's lower profile too. Because, you know, this guy doing it, you can only get so low on that hammer because I'm touching this. Whereas if I'm using this guy, I'm able to go really down pretty low, if you see that.
Now, Justin asked, right, if you would ever work both sides. And I said I only do the bottom. I do both. If like I said, mainly for schools, if we pull the action out, I file them, and then I'll always hit them once on each side. And that always gives me a really good end result.
So you're saying,
since I already have the action on its side. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that you'll go down like this?
Yes.
And up like this, correct?
Yes, because I can get that second angle a lot easier since it's, you know, I'm having them lean back, and so that gives it a really good even sound.
So assuming this is that strike point right in the center, are you going kind of like, if this is the strike point, are you thinking of that as like a 1/4 inch? And then going...
I'm doing the top of the string grooves like you would do the bottom at the bottom of the string grooves. This time I'm going at the top of the string grooves at that kind of 45 degree angle.
You're doing the same thing, just on the opposite side as what David was showing earlier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But my question is, if you've surfaced the hammers, you don't see the string groove. Are you kind of doing an imaginary quarter?
Yeah. I kind of just, you know, just from looking at string grooves after a while, you get used to seeing how far down they go. And yeah, I guess it is like that 1/4 inch or something.
Yeah, so that's something we should maybe bring up too. Hey Dave, if you're watching this, I went to your office and I grabbed a pencil, so sorry. I'll put it back. That was way off. Hold on just a second.
I
just created this this top one. That's the strike point right there. So that's like right in the center of that. So I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch below and 1/8 of an inch above. And so as you can see, man, I really wish I didn't. I'll just do this to the other one. I don't know what I was looking at. I guess I'm hungry or something.
Kind of finish your statement, Victor. When you're filing the hammers, are you leaving a slight string groove when you're filing, or are you removing all of it?
Just the slightest at the crown, if I can, just so I can see, I can mate them later. But sometimes if they're really bad, I'll just go ahead and remove all the string grooves. But I hear a lot of that from technicians as well. A lot of them believe you should leave like a little bit at the crown.
Yeah.
To me, it's case by case.
So here's what we're talking about. So this almost imaginary 1/4 inch in that center right there. And so we'll go kind of above it like what Victor's talking about. And then we'll go kind of below that. The closer we get to actually voicing in that kind of zone, the more careful we have to be, because it will make a bigger difference.
Yes. Yeah. And if I already have that action out, I'm going to hit both sides, because then when I get it back in the piano, I just have to do little ones that are sticking out, maybe a dozen, that are sticking out, instead of having to do multiple passes, hitting just the bottom shoulder. So, yeah. And it gives it a really nice even sound. So I do like doing that if I have the action out.
Just so you know, you can easily make stuff like this. A lot of technicians have done that, where they just go get a little piece of wood, little block of something, and then put some needles in it. Glue in some needles. That's easy for you to do. So you all have a little bit of a homework assignment between now. What day is it?
It's Wednesday.
14th. Now on Friday, I would love to hear if you've had any appointments or even on your own piano, try to do some of what we did today. I would love to hear your thoughts on it on Friday, because that usually will spawn more questions. Hey, I did this and this is what I ran into. So even if you go and fashion your own, even, wrap some needles in some duct tape and play around with it, on your own piano or get access to it, it's a good way to kind of play around with it. And that's what we have our technicians do in a safe environment, usually with those school pianos.
Are y'all typically using 3 needles, by the way?
I usually use 1, and I've started to use 3 today because these are the needles are spaced out just perfectly like the strings. And so you can, instead of having to do 3 pokes underneath each string, I can just do 1 poke underneath all 3. And that saves me time and energy, and it's kind of foolproof. Was somebody going to ask something else? Right here?
On the bass strings, like you were saying, and the really high treble, you're saying you'll try to go more into the shoulder, especially in the bass. Have you tried doing angel shot voicing on lower bass instead of working lower in the shoulder?
I mean, essentially, isn't it kind of what we're doing?
It is. I was going to actually mention that earlier.
Yeah, we are kind of essentially doing angel shot. And so the only thing I'm doing in the bass differently is I'm starting and going lower and seeing how that goes. Because it's funny, like for me, the bass is precious. Like it takes a long time to pack in the bass. And so I want it to have a softer tone, but it still rumbles.
Yeah, what I normally do is kind of just like lightly just jab like the very top of the crown. I know you don't want to get into the crown, but I just like the weight of the hammer, just let those needles go in, like, I don't know, like the smallest bit. And I find like that works okay. I don't know what do you think about that?
So what are you saying that you're going straight into the crown, the center core, but where?
Yeah. Just directly right in the middle.
So that's down, more like the sugar coating method.
Yeah,
right?
I think, yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
So, for example, I don't know whether you can see it here, but
Yeah,
it's got all the little needles. So it's got like 10 or 12 little needles, and then you do right there on the strike point itself.
Okay, so here's my thought on that. My goal is to, when I'm out in the service calls and I'm just doing kind of the normal maintenance, my goal is to never have to remove the action for that.
I see. Yeah.
So that's why the technique I'm doing is more like you don't have to potentially create more issues for something you're going to do for free.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought process. That tool is amazing. It's great for grands, and it's great if you're going to tip the action out.
I see. Yeah, but not really if you're, because like you're saying, you're trying to do this fast, quick, and you don't want to take it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, the sugar coating would be either, like you said, for a grand, or you would be doing it during other servicing where you're going to do both the shaping, voicing, maybe a little sugar coating on the top of it after you complete your voicing to just finish it off.
And to add to that, I found that when I actually surface the hammers and reshape them, a lot of times I'm not doing nearly as much voicing as I thought I was going to, because it rectified a lot of the issues.
Right, just eliminating that flatness in the grooves.
Yeah,
cured a lot of ills. Yeah,
and mating the hammers to the strings, that fixes a lot of those zingers.
Yeah. Now, what do you do, David, if you break a needle on a hammer? How do you like to get it out? I have a lot of trouble.
This ought to be a good one.
I have two things that I'll do. One is I'll get my little end nippers that I use to trim center pins and kind of like dig it out. If I start to dig it out and I'm like, this is going to be bad, I'll just push it in further. That's honestly what I do, to where it's never going to be an issue. Unless 30 years from now, 50 years from now, the technician is like surfacing hammers and he rips his sandpaper.
Yeah, I've tried that, but I guess I just can't push it far enough, and you can still hear it. You'll hear hear it hitting the street.
What do you do? Just dig it out?
Yeah, I've had to file it a little bit, just on wherever the need, and make a little channel, and with end nippers, your needle nose pliers, just kind of yank it out. Yeah. The first time I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I was so scared. But I guess there's really no nice way to do it.
So I'll tell you some. If you're afraid of blood, if that grosses you out, beware. You can mute me. I do not know why. This has happened probably a dozen times in my career, where I reach down into my bag and it literally either pokes me or goes underneath my nail, like that Spanish splinter. And I've done that like a dozen times so do yourself a favor, and it usually happens with your chopstick voicer, is usually what it is. Your chopstick voicer, you'll get something on top of that. I've done a lot of bleeding on hammers in my career.
Go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby and buy a package of corks.
Yeah, or an eraser, like a little eraser.
Or an eraser, exactly, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
how many times do you stab yourself, David, voicing a whole set?
Grand pianos. So when you're doing a grand piano, we have a grand piano here. I'm not going to voice it, Dave. But this is typically what happens. You all get to see this. This is typically what happens, and it happens quite a bit. Not just me. Is you'll be going through, you'll have it on a block, or you'll kind of go like this, and I'll be going through, and I'll either doing shoulder voicing like this, and I'll go and I'll clip it like that. And that happens a lot. And it's usually one thing, and it really, I'll just say it really hurts. Because to put that amount of pressure, you're putting a lot of pressure on it. So these needles went in.
Yeah. I always stab myself in the same spot on every action. It's right when I pass the dampers and right when I get to the bass. I don't know if my thought goes out, I'm stop thinking, but it's always in the same spots.
Yeah, in one of the classes, actually, it was the Angel Shot voicing class. They actually talked about part of the reason why Angel Shot's more effective is that you're not using that hard hammering, punching in of the things. So it's a lot safer. You're not going to hit your thumb. You're not going to hit your hand. That you're pushing in, you're setting it, and that's kind of the same thing that you're showing there, where you're setting it and pushing, but you're not like pounding.
It's
so you're
true.
eliminating. It becomes much more safer.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for you guys to try to do this because it makes a big difference. It still has the sound when we need it. We didn't kill the bass, but we made it much sweeter. And now Taylor, one of the owners who just walked in, can now sell this piano. It's beautiful, T. We just have a small class today. Hello. This is Taylor, one of the owners of Classic Pianos. We did a tour of your space on Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah, just the other day. So Taylor and his family own Classic Pianos, and it's amazing, and they're amazing. And thank you for letting me work on this one.
No problem.
Now you're going to be able to charge twice as much.
Exactly, right?
I'm just finishing up. Are you going to lock up?
Yeah, I know.
So this is another thing, by the way, that as you go to piano stores and you can they'll have pianos like this, and a lot of times they don't have technicians that are able to soften them like this and just sweeten the tone. So you being able to offer that, Victor, I know that you're going to some of these piano stores just saying, hey, I'll just do it no charge. It'll be included in this. And that will kind of just be mind blown from them because they'll be like, whoa, you just set our pianos, aside and made them something different than their competitors. Because most piano stores, their pianos do not sound this sweet when you're talking their Samex, their Young Changs, or, what is the Pearl Rivers. They're going to be bright, brittle, and harsh. And this is a way that the piano stores can have something that really distinguishes their inventory. Final questions before we head off?
I don't know if you plan on having a class on grand voicing again, but for grand voicing, if you're doing it, real quick, 5-10 minutes, it's included for free. Are you only doing it using a chopstick tool, or are you pulling that action out in and out?
You're gonna have to stay tuned, my friend.
Yeah.
There's a process, and it is a process I do at no charge, and it is pretty quick. So nice. Maybe we'll do that for next week. We'll do the grand version of this. As you can see, this made quite a bit of a difference. And so I'll go ahead and check out with Classic. We'll see, if they have a grand that we can do the same thing to, because they're really sweet in letting us do this. I think that for them, they're like, sweet, some free voicing. So it works out for everybody. But the grand stuff, I'm doing 3 things. I'm doing soft pedal, Angel Shot, and then some sugar coating. Depending on how much sugar coating, though, I might go pretty deep. So it will be one, if not a portion, if not all 3 of those techniques within about a 10-minute period is what I give myself. And I think I'm actually doing that tomorrow for a teacher for a Kauai or a high-end player. So I'm going to be doing this, and I'll kind of brush up on some stuff, and hopefully it'll go well. And I'll let you know next week if it did go well or if I have to go lacquer some hammers. Anyways, hopefully this is helpful. I will see you all Friday. Homework assignment is to try to do some of this on either your piano, somebody else's piano, and just play around with it and have some questions. It's kind of a Q&A on voicing. Stacy, did you need to add something?
Nope, just great. That sounds awesome. Yeah, come with some questions on Friday. Try it. Actually try it. I'll do mine. Yes. I will totally do it. Yeah. And then if I mess it up, then you can show me how to fix it, right?
I will. All right. Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everyone.